Namaste, friends. This is Nikki here. I was asked to speak about our emotional intelligence and what happens when we are triggered. This talk is spontaneous, and after listening, I hope you'll find yourself receiving a lot of compassion and mostly having grace for yourself. It's important for us to understand that when we feel triggered, we can experience a range of emotions, sometimes simultaneously. We can laugh even though we're experiencing trauma, grief, devastation, or we can cry when we're happy and ecstatic. Knowing that it's possible to feel multiple emotions at the same time is a healthy place for us to start our journey. And it releases the pressure of binary beliefs, limiting beliefs. Ask yourself if you've been feeling rage, anger, sadness, dismay, and at the same time, feeling compassionate or feeling empathy. Know that it's possible to feel a complex range of emotions. And while our initial feeling might be to run, to hide, we might even experience what's called the fight or flight experience, where we shut down, we freeze. Another aspect can kick in, and then we can be consumed with whatever it is that we are feeling. We can find ourselves on a loop, thinking and overthinking. Or we can find ourselves in another loop of constantly reliving the emotion, constantly going through the feeling. Now, it's important to understand that another way of dealing with our triggers and our emotions is avoidance. So I want you to ask yourself, do I avoid? Do I avoid going into the realm of what it is that I'm feeling? We can recognize our feelings and emotions and not necessarily deal with them. We can understand our feelings and become so consumed that we don't give ourselves the time, the space, and the grace to distinguish and understand the deeper significance. And when we live in a constant loop of reaction or emotional and intellectual avoidance, then we're not really allowing ourselves to grow. In the spiritual perspective of when triggers or trauma, when things happen to us, it's not really happening to us, it's happening for us to grow from this experience. And that might seem as if it's hard to accept at times. But when we create room in our lives to observe, Krishnamurti once said that the highest form of intelligence is the ability to observe ourselves without judgment. When we do this, when we practice observing what we're feeling, even if it's avoidance or being completely consumed, that is the first step that we take towards healing. Now, friends, I want you to think of emotions as energy in motion. Our emotions can be triggered with sound. You might hear a sound bath, you might hear a song and have an emotional response. Emotions can also be assigned colors. So if we're feeling extremely passionate or enraged, you might see red, right? We also have this phrase, seeing red, as being synonymous with anger. And when we speak of colors from the yogic perspective, we know that the whole range of the spectrum correlates to the chakras, but I'll leave that for another conversation. Our emotions carry deep, complex wisdom, and they actually provide clues for healing from our past and our present, personal and generational karma. But when we deny ourselves the ability to feel our emotions or place judgment, then we are embodying conditioned patterns that we've inherited from learned behavior, from our parents, from religion, from culture, from society. In order for us to heal and to effectively move forward, it is imperative for us to acknowledge what we're feeling, but simply allow ourselves time. And that can be very different for each person. One person may take a few days, another a few months, another maybe decades. Our triggers don't completely heal, but we get better at managing our emotional and intellectual responses. And we can shift our vibration from guilt, shame, blame, powerlessness, and fear into a place of love, peace, tranquility, happiness, and joy. But it does require work. Our emotions are a gateway, so to speak. And the more that we peel the layers of complex behavior, the more we begin to understand if we are being reactive or repressed. And I'll share with you now an example that I gave to my 6-year-old nephew when he was being bullied. I told him that when he feels love, the love that he feels for his parents, the joy that he feels for playing with his toys and his friends, the happiness that he feels when he's at school learning, those feelings of love, joy, and happiness are his North Star. And they act as a steady path for him to know what is the highest vibration for him. And anything that makes him feel like he's moving in the opposite direction, sadness, rage, anything other than love, joy, and happiness is moving him away from where he needs to be. Our emotions act like a compass. And in order for us to know where we're going, we must first acknowledge where we've been. So this is why it's imperative for us to identify what it is that we're feeling and to process this field of subtle energy. Now, my 6-year-old nephew, of course, I spoke to him in words that he could understand, but he understood. He understood that that was basically a steady baseline for him to know that when he's moving in an alternate direction, if he's moving metaphorically southwest, east, south, then he's moving away from his love, his joy, and his compassion. He's moving away from what makes him happy. And that is not spiritually bypassing. That is just having an anchor and a baseline to return. And that's very important for us to understand. So one of the major components of allowing ourselves to come back to that baseline and train our brain, as I like to call it. Now, one tool that can help us to return to our compass is creating what's called a shifter. And a shifter is something that you can think of instantly that can put a smile on your face and create that same feeling of joy, of love, of peace, of happiness. And it could be maybe your pet, maybe your favorite food, or a favorite song. Anything that you can think of that can immediately shift you from whatever it is that you're experiencing into a place of steadiness and ease and going back to your North Compass. And this is very important because when we begin to ask ourselves, what am I really feeling? How am I feeling? then we give ourselves an opportunity to maintain the vibration of love. And that's a practice. It's a practice of coming back to a frequent base of love, joy, and happiness. And it does take work. Now, the deeper question is, am I ready to feel the plethora of emotions that might come up? While it might seem like it's a stigma to acknowledge the range of emotions, the complexity that might arise within you, know that a deeply spiritual practice honors the importance of all of our feelings. Stars cannot shine without the darkness. And even in the daytime, while they're there, we cannot see them. We need the darkness, we need the nighttime in order for those stars to be illuminated. Just as we need our full range of emotions, even the ones that we may not want to feel, in order for us to move into a place of transcendence. Love is the greatest vibration. It is the highest vibration, and love has the capacity to transform even the most challenging and painful emotion. And this is exactly why, when we think about our shifters, it can allow us to go from a place of south back to north, to move from the direction that might be the opposite pole back to our steady baseline. So can we transform our triggers? We may not be able to initially transform what triggers us, but we do get better when we observe ourselves and when we use the compass of emotions to better understand where we are and what we're experiencing. Can we transform our triggers? We can transform our pain and our feelings when we practice emotional intelligence. And the more we allow ourselves the freedom to express the full spectrum of emotions we have, the better we're going to become at observing our reactions. Can we transform our triggers? Well, we can shift from reacting to responding. And responding also includes saying no to anything that's going to take you away from the direction of your love, your joy, your happiness, and what brings you peace. Responding takes conscious responsibility. Reacting is when we are in a fight or flight instinctual habit. So it's important for us to really get to the root of what it is that I'm really emotionally feeling in this moment or when a trigger arises. Can we transform our triggers? Well, when we practice using our shifters, we can train ourselves to move from reacting to responding. Friends, no matter what you're experiencing, I want you to know that emotional intelligence strengthens when we choose love over intellect. And when we give ourselves unapologetic permission to feel our feelings, to express our emotions, then we're giving ourselves a chance to deeply heal, to look our triggers in the eye, and to eventually transform our trauma and transcend our pain with grace and integrity. Sending you deep healing with love, empathy, and compassion. You are seen, you are heard, and you are held. Namaste.